Okay, so today's daf yomi is Bava Kamma, Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph 101. We're going to start 101a at the top, and the daf tells us as follows. We're dedicating it for Yeshua, for Am Yisrael, Atzola for the Shvuyim, Shmira for the Chayalim. Tan Rabbanan, Hanosein Eitzim L'cheresh, Sos Man Kisei. So somebody gives pieces of wood, materials, raw materials to a craftsman to make them into a chair. But instead of making them into a chair, the craftsman turns them into a bench. He deviated from the instructions. Hard to imagine a contractor deviating, but that's what he did. Or he made a safsal, or he made a bench. Here, Kobe, have a seat. Sit down. There's a Gemara right there, Kobe, right next to Eitan. You go right there on the other side, Kobe. We're very proud of you being here. Please. Come on. It's not Yankee Stadium. What? Right there, right there. Next to Eitan. Shkoyach, Kobe. By the way, after we're done with the recording, I could update you on what's going on with Kobe's school and Moshe's school. We'll update you afterwards. But anyway, so Kobe, we're on top of 101A. A person gives wood to the carpenter and says, make it into a chair. The carpenter makes it into a bench. Or a safso, he says, make into a bench. He makes into a chair. So Rabbi Meir says, no single Eitzav, that the carpenter has to pay him back for the materials. Why? This is, it combines a couple of different laws. That Rabbi Meir says that we view this person who deviated from the instructions as a thief. We view the carpenter as a thief, and a thief acquires something by virtue of changing the materials. So therefore, he has to pay what it was worth when he took it, which means he has to pay back the value of the materials. So that's all he has to pay back. He doesn't have to pay back the value of the. He doesn't have to give him back the chair or pay back the value of the materials once they're turned into a chair. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, no. Rabbi Yehuda says, we don't like what this guy did. We're going to penalize him. We don't want the thief to benefit out of this. If the improvement was greater than the material, then no single esayitzia, then he gives him the materials. Meaning, who gives him? The person who gave the materials to the carpenter just pays him back for the materials, and he gets to take back the chair. But im hashevach, and if the materials were greater than the improvement, no single was hashevach. He just pays for basically the current value. So the person, the carpenter, has the lower hand, and the guy who gave him the materials has the upper hand, because Rabbi Yehuda is penalizing the carpenter for his deviation from the beginning. Rabbi Meir himself admits, Im nasan eitzim l'cheresh chasos ben kisa noav asa ben kisa kaur. Rabbi Meir himself admits that he gave the wood to the craftsman to make a nice chair, and he made them into a disgusting chair, or safsal noav asa safsal kaur, a beautiful bench, and made them into a bad bench. There, Rabbi Meir admits that the craftsman has the lower hand. He gives him whichever is less, either the improvements or the expenses, because there he's not a thief. Ironically, if you're a thief, you have a little bit of extra. This is not the first time we've seen this concept. You have a little bit of extra rights as a thief. Okay. And now we get into what is the meat of today's discussion. And we say to somebody, what are appearances? How much weight, how much stock do we give to appearances? But that's not how you dress when you go to school. That's not what we care about today. What we care about today is Ibalahu. Amar asked the following question. We were just talking about the improvements where you turn the wood and you made it into a by the way, Hugh, I want to say thank you very much. The place looked beautiful over Shabbos, thanks to your efforts. So, Ibayu Yesh Shevach Simanin Alat Semar. It really does. Hugh started putting the tablecloths on this whole room on Shabbos, and it really does make a big difference. It really makes a very big difference. So the question really is now, Yesh Shevach Simanin Alat Semar or Ein Shevach Simanin Alat Semar? When Okay, we just said the case where you stole the wood, the carpenter stole the wood and turned it into a chair. We view that as an improvement. You only have to pay back for the material. Now the Gemara asks, what about for the dye? Is this matter considered an improvement on the wool if you put the dye on the wool or not? What is even the question? So Rashi is going to tell us the question, but the Gemara itself doesn't know the question. The Gemara itself is bothered by what's the question here. And that's what the Gemara is going to ask. But Rashi tells us that the question really is how do we view the fact that you take this color and you colored the object? Is the color going to be considered like a tangible element there? Is the color something tangible? Chazusa milsahi. Is the color something that's a tangible change or not? Color is something ephemeral. It's not like a chair which you build. The color is something that you're just looking at. So the Gemara is going to explain why this is relevant. The first thing Gemara wants to understand, what's the question? The Gemara goes through 4 attempts. Hey, Chidami, what's the scenario? Let's say you stole, what do they use to make dye? The berries or something. You stole the berries. Vidakinu, you crushed it. Vitarinu, and you soaked them. And then vitzava bahen, and then you use them to dye the garment. If that's what we're talking about, well, then there's not even a question. For sure, you acquired the dye by changing it from a berry into a liquidy form. That's a dye. So of course you stole it there. What? You acquired it. So here what we're talking about is where you stole samanin, you stole dye, sharuyan, you stole dye that was already steeping in the pot. Vitzavabahu. And you use that steeped color to dye. That's what we're asking about. That's what we're asking about. You stole the dye that was already in its dye form, and then you just used it and you colored a garment. So then the question is, Mai yesh sevach semanin al gabet samar. Do we say, okay, now it's you put the dye onto the wool and you improve the dye, and you could say to the guy, Damar havli samani deshakatenu, that you could say that basically under these circumstances, you could say to him, give me the dye that I took. So under these, so basically, do we view the dye as though it's really like still tangible, and so therefore, the person who was robbed can say, "Give me back the dye that you took and you put on the wool," or could we say, "Oh, Dilma ain't shevach siman al gabet samar," or maybe the wool, or maybe the dye is not going to be considered tangible on the wool. Damarle, that the guy who stole it and put the dye on the wool could say to the guy who's making the claim against him that he's a thief, yeah, I didn't take anything. So Gemara says, what? That's not possible. Gemara rejects that suggestion. Gemara says, Amri, Gemara suggests that's not possible. The ain't shevach siman al gabet semer, mimatzi amrle leis loch gabay v'lo midi. Nemi le havli simani dafsi dinu. He says, if you're going to say that there's no improvement onto the thing that he stole, then the guy can say, I didn't take anything from you. He says, you took something from me. I lost money. Pay me back for it. You clearly took something. He took no, he dyed the wool.
He stole the dye. The dye is already put onto the wool is already dyed.
After the guy stole the dye, he put it on the wool. He hasn't clarified that yet. So now we have a third approach. So maybe it's the other way. Ein shevach samanin al gabe etzemer. So we say ela hakisa. So we're taking the other approach. We're going to say ein samanin al gabe etzemer. We're not going to. Do we say that we don't view the the dye on top of the wool as though it's a tangible thing. And so therefore he has to pay him for the dye. Or do we say no? There is an improvement in the dye on top of the wool. And he could say to him, and he says to him, since there's improvement, he says, he says, here's your dye. I'm giving it back to you. It's right there. It's on the wall. Go take it. So the Gemara says, Shaklinu, but my shaklai, but Safon, how's he going to take the dye off the wall with the detergent? Safon avure mi'aber, ashavelo aver. Okay, you can get the dye off, but he can't. It's not tangible. You can remove it. So that can't be the case either. So what we're talking about here is the following. So this is the case. He stole the wool and the dye that belonged to one person. He stole one guy's, Ruvain had wool, and he also had dye. And Shimon comes along and steals Ruvain's wool, and he also steals Ruvain's dye. And now he dyes that piece of wool with this dye. And now he's returning that piece of wool. So our question is, Yesh Shevach Samanin al Gabi at Semer. Do we say that the dye that's on the wool is tangible, and now I'm returning to you not just the wool, but the wool, and I'm also returning to you the dye, because the dye is tangible, it's in existence on top of the wool. Or perhaps or perhaps it's not considered tangible. And he's returned the wool, but Simonin will Mahaderway. But he hasn't really returned the dye, and so now he still has to pay for the dye. You had a question, Harold? So that's the question. Does he still have to pay for the dye separately now? The Gemara says, Amri typically, the Yakarway Nilay, but Dmei. So the Gemara says, well, wait, we can anyway answer this question. If he stole the wool and the wool was worth $20, but now it's a dyed piece of wool, it's worth $25. So he could just say, look, I'm giving you back more than I took. I'm giving you back $25, and the dye was $5. I'm giving you back everything. So what do you want from me? Gemara says, no, that's not the scenario. We're talking about a case, the Zal Siva. Now the price of the dyed wool has gone down. Ironically, the raw wool is worth more than the dyed wool. So that's basically the price of the wool has gone down. And so therefore, it's not worth the same price as it is with the wool and the dye independently. And the robber is saying, I could have sold a dye, or I could have dyed a different garment. Now you cost me money. And the other guy is saying, look, I'm giving you back your wool and I'm giving you back your dye. So that's the question the Gemara is asking. Or the same alternative question is going Shitzababu Kupa. Or let's say he died. Rashi gives two different definitions here. One is basically he died a monkey, and now he's returning the monkey with the dye on it, meaning to say there's no value to a dyed monkey. Or he died, another explanation is Kupa is a box. Basically, he dyed something which doesn't go up in value by dyeing it. So he says, listen, I'm returning your dye to you. And the other guy's like, no, you're not, because I can't get it. So what's the answer there? The Gemara doesn't answer the question. Instead, the Gemara goes to a different alternative. Ravina says, could go in December dechad v'siman dechad. So there's a different possibility here. One person owned the wool, another person owned the dye. V'ka'asi kof v'tzavi lahut semar b'hanach simanin. And a monkey comes along, and it's a totally different scenario. One guy owns wool, one guy owns dye, and a monkey comes along and dyes the wool with this dye. Do we say yesh sevach simanin al gabi tzemer? Do we say that the dye on top of the wool is tangible? The Amrei Havli Simani de Gabach Minhu. This guy says, give me back my dye. You have my dye. Odoma ain't Shevach Siman al Gabi Tzemer. The Amrei Leislach Gabai Klum. He says, I got nothing. So it's not a question. Nobody stole it here. This guy wants his dye back that the monkey put on it. And one guy says, my dye is on your wool. And the other guy says, no, I don't have anything. So how do we answer that question? Yeah, you had a question? Anybody have a question about this scenario? Okay. Tashma. So the Gemara says, Beged should travel beklipe arwa. So it says in the Mishnah, and Rashi already tells us elsewhere. The Gusi Gemara is going to go on a little bit of a tangent now because the Gemara, there's no bavli on these topics of Orla and Shvi'is. So whenever we mention it, the Gemara goes into it a little depth because this is the only chance they have to discuss it. I don't know if it's even relevant. I mean, you say that he did the damage, it'd be a top. Okay, yeah, presumably that somebody who's not responsible for it. So there's not really a monkey. You know that. There's not. Okay, so Tashma, so we learned from the mission Orla. Let's say you have a garment that you dyed with the peels of an Orla. What's Orla? Orla, actually, there's a few different references to it in the Torah, but here Orla refers to the fruit that grows from a tree. The first 3 years, you're not allowed to get any benefit from that fruit or the peels of that fruit. So, but you took the peels and you dyed a garment with them. So the Mishnah says you have to burn it. So we see from here that this tree, that this garment that has the dye of Arla, you can't get benefit from it. So it proves it's still in existence. So he says, Yidalik, Ama Chazusa Milsi. We see that it's still there, because otherwise, why would you have to burn it if it's not there? So the Gemara answers, Amarava, no. When it comes to Arla and only Arla, if it's just a benefit that your only benefit is something you're seeing, it's only visible, that's going to be considered a benefit. Other areas of Jewish law, we don't say a benefit that's visible is considered benefit. Like chametz, well, it does say you're not allowed to see chametz, but let's say that if it's not something that you're not allowed to benefit from, it doesn't, like you're not allowed to benefit from meat and milk cooked together, but you're allowed to look at it. You don't have to close your eyes when you pass by the McDonald's. But in this case, when it comes to the Orla, this Torah specifically prohibits it because it says the Tanya are Arilim lo yeyachel Eliel Isra Achila Minayin Shli Yamimenu lo Yitzaba Bav lo Yadlik Bos Aner Tamalom Varaltem Arolato Es Perio Arilim lo yeyachel. Rabbi says cool, and you can't benefit in another way. Kobe have an amazing day. Moshe have an amazing day. Wow, what a mitzvah! Shkoyach, beautiful. Love that you're helping your grandmother. Grandma, this is the one from Morocco, Casablanca. Okay, beautiful. So again, we haven't answered this question. Gemara is trying to bring another proof to answer it. Toshma. So we have the other attempt to prove it. Beged shetzavu beklipe shviyah. So another thing you're not allowed to benefit from is after the time where there's a period of time where you're allowed to use sabbatical year fruits, but there comes a period of time where you can't benefit from them. So let's say you took this garment that was dyed with the fruits of the sabbatical year, you have to burn it. So we see from here that even though it's just a dye, it's considered like it's tangible and you have to get rid of it. Maria says, no, that case is different. Shani Hassam, that case is different. Jamakra, Tiyah. It says about the sabbatical year, it says Kodesh Tiyah, which means Bavayaso Tiyah. It means to say that even as long as it's there under any, that they always have their holiness, even after they're dyed on the garment. So therefore, it's a special dispensation. Yes, Harold. Yeah. Or no, Shemitah dye. I haven't seen any. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it would be something that you need to do. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So maybe, yeah, tell it to suggest it to Jeremy's father-in-law. He's in Israel. And they need jobs for all the mashgichim, and now there's a new area to say that there's no shmita, that there's no shmita, that they make. It's not just dye. They have clothing that they make from stuff that grows from the ground, so they need to make sure. Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't prioritize it over other areas of your life, but okay. Donnie, I'm sure they do, by the way. They have hashgachas on everything now. Like you want to buy appliances, there's a whole line of hashgachas from Star K and OU on appliances. I don't know if OU, but I know for sure Star K, they do to say whether or not you can use it on Shabbos, whether it's available, like kosher refrigerators, kosher stoves, Shabbos mode, oven, very sophisticated appliances that are, and there's a lot of halachic intersection with them. Like this refrigerator, some refrigerators are more sensitive to go off when you open them. So these refrigerators, you could say on Shabbos mode, the motor is not going to go off when you open it. Okay. Anyway, Rava drew a contradiction between Mishnayos. That it says with respect to one Mishnah, Tanan Beged Shetzavu Beklipe Orla Yidalik. One Mishnah says a garment that was dyed with the Orla dye has to be burnt. That proves Alma Chazusa Milsahi. That proves that the appearance itself is tangible. Veramini, but we have a contradictory source which says Revias Dam Shenivla'a Bebayis. Okay, so the blood of a dead man, and you're in a house, everything in the house is tamei. But let's say you have the blood, and then the blood is absorbed into the ground. So then we say Revias Dam Shenivla'a Bebayis. So this is the Mishnah. We say as follows. We say, let's say you have a Revias Dam. Let's say you have from Olos. Let's say you have a quarter lug of blood that became absorbed into the house. A bias tamei. The house is tamei because you had a dead body in it. It made it all tamei. Quarter lug of blood from a dead man. The amrila bias tahor. But some say no, the house is tahor. Velo pligi, and we explain the contradiction. It's not an argument. Habakalim davamei kara. If there were utensils that were there before the blood was absorbed into the ground, they're going to be tamei. Habakalim da atzulu besof. But if there were utensils that were there after the blood was already absorbed into the ground, then they're not going to become tamei. Nivua biksus. Let's say the blood became absorbed into your garment. Rowan im mitchabeses haksus. We have to see whether or not you can launder the garment. If you can launder the garment and a quarter of the blood will come out from it, then we're going to say it's tamei. Then we'll say it's tamei. But if we can't get it out, then we're going to say the garment is tahora because the blood is really not its own tangible thing. But anyway, we see from here that even though if the blood could come out, then we're going to view it as tangible. But if the blood can't come out, we're going to view it as non-tangible. Whereas when it comes to the orla, we don't draw that distinction. We say it's always burnt. So how do we explain this contradiction? So Amar Rav Kahana Mikui Revio Shanu. No, Rav Kahana says that this Mishnah was telling us a leniency of blood because this is a specific type of blood that's called kan bedam tevusa de rabbanan. This is called the blood of tevusa, which is rabbinic. What's tevusa? What's tevusa blood? Remember this, we did this in Nida, but that was last cycle. Let's say you have a person who was killed, and as he was dying, a quarter lug of blood went out from him. So if he went out while he was alive, then the blood is not considered the blood of a dead man, and the blood is not transmitted tumah. But if it went out from him after he died, then he would be tamei. So we have a doubt about this blood. So we don't know when it went out, when it was all alive or whether it was all dead. So therefore, it's called dam tfusa. It's rabbinically, we're going to view it as prohibited blood. But for that case, for that reason, since we're talking about dam tfusa, we could be lenient and say that if the blood won't come out, then we're going to view it as totally absorbed, and it's different than the case of the arla that was dyed. So now, since we're doing all these contradictions that Rava is raising from Olos and Arla and Shemitah year, we're now going to add another one. Rava raised another contradiction between a Mishnah and a Brisa. We learned in the Mishnah in Shavuos. Now we know that the sabbatical year of fruits, they are going to be prohibited once the fruits are in the field are no longer there, then the stuff you brought into your house has to be burnt. And the time where they're no longer in the field, that's called the man bir, the time where they're supposed to be burnt. So Rava Rami, he says, Tanan, mimin hatzovin. So these are those items that you die with them, and all the laws of the sabbatical year apply. Meaning to say the holiness of Shemitah year applies to things that grow from the ground, that you can make a dye from them as a result. So stuff that's edible, or the stuff that you can make a dye from them. So basically, and these are the things from those things that are used as a dye, and so therefore the laws of Shemitah apply to them. What are these things? Sefichim are like a weed or a growth from stray seeds. Satim, which are like satim is like a saffron, and kotza. And the kotza is some type of grass that they use for a dye. Yeshla and shvius. All these fruits, all these things, the laws of sabbatical year apply. Udmei and shvius. And if you sell them, which you're not allowed to do, but if you did, then their sanctity of Shemitah year is transferred to their money. V'yeshla and bior. And you have to destroy them with and biur, and you have to destroy the money that was gained from them when it comes to the time of biur in the field. So we see from this Mishnah Alma Eitzim Yesh Ben Mishum Kedusha Shvius, that even though these things are wood, because they're things that used to dye, these grass, these reeds, they have the law of the sabbatical year. Not only fruits, but tzvichim are not. Tzvichim are just like trees; they just grow, and yet you're using them the laws of the sabbatical year. There are many, but we have a contradiction because we say, "Olekinim," the reeds of the leaves of the reeds, and the leaves of the va'alegafanim of the grapevines, the leaves of the grapevines. That a person gathered them up from the field in order to use them as a storage, to basically use them as fuel in the winter. Since sometimes people eat them and sometimes they use them for the oven, we're going to say, well, we look at what your intent was. If you gathered up these grape leaves for the purpose of eating them, then we're going to view them as having the sanctity of the Shemitah year, and now all those laws will apply. But if you gather them up for fuel, they don't have it. So in the second source, in the Brisa, it says that wood does not have the sanctity of the sabbatical year unless you gather it up to eat it. Whereas in the first source, we say that it does. That the first source says the trees do. In the second source, it says it doesn't. Umeshani, and Rava answers this question. Amar Kra la'achla. Rava says, well, it depends. It depends. There's another general rule. It's not just that those fruits that are ready for eating are included in the sabbatical year, but also there's another category. What's the category? It has to come to Misha Nasa Ubioro Shavin. It only applies to something that's like food, that when you eat it, when you use it, it's consumed and destroyed at the same time. The consumption and the destruction, like eating, happens at the same time. Yato Asim Shanasan Achar Biuran. It comes to exclude those types of wood where the benefit happens after they are destroyed. So basically, most wood used for fuel, it's the coal. They're used for heat. And so therefore, since the consumption is after the destruction, the laws of Shemitah don't apply there. So the Gemara says, Va'ika eitzim demashchan da'anatzon biyuron shavin. But what about those types of wood that are like very oily wood? And you use those to illuminate like a torch, and there it happens at the same, there it does happen at the same time. So Rava explains, Stam eitzim la'asaka heina omdim. Most wood, we could assume, is used for fuel and not for light. Therefore, it's considered like a tree. And so therefore, the laws of the sabbatical won't apply. But the svichim, these weeds or these stray growths, that most of them are for dyeing. And so therefore, they have the kedusha. And so therefore, that you can't use them for anything after the time of biur. And the grapevines and the grape leaves, or the branches of the grapevines and the branches of the reeds, there's some who consume them and some who burn them, and so therefore we go after the intent. So the Gemara says, actually, this is going to be a dispute, and we'll pick this up, God willing, tonight. I just want to say, those of you who are wondering, we're going to do the Daf Yomi tonight at 7:20, even though 200 million Americans are going to be watching the football game and the Taylor Swift appearance. We're going to be studying the Daf Yomi at 7:20 tonight, God willing. Yeah, it's going to be, you'll be the life of the party. Put it on your Super Bowl party. Put on the Daf Yomi. You'll be the life of the party. We'll stop the Daf here. Shkoyach.
Thank you. Bye-bye.